Talking with Anomaly here, and today we're going to be talking about BlizzCon and the recap that it was. Of course, we got playing over top, the 20-25 minute presentation they put on, but today I'm going to try and get through that in about half the time and give you my thoughts about what I am the most excited for coming out of BlizzCon from an announcement perspective. So, of course, like any great thing, or any great BlizzCon, they dropped the cinematic trailer for 9.1 and really gave us an idea of what 9.1 is going to be like. Essentially, Anduin is some rogue, mind-controlled agent for the jailer, steals a key from the Archon and Bastion, and basically, that's where we left off. The idea, I guess, is the jailer is collecting these keys and is going to unlock something pretty scary and dangerous. In any event, I really know nothing about the lore. Maybe I'll get to talk about that soon. But the idea here is that, we're heading to the mall. So Blizzard unveiled essentially the next sort of raid, the next content patch, and where we're headed. So first up is a brand new landmass, or subzone, I guess, inside of the mall that we'll be heading to called Korthia. So we'll be heading to Korthia, new subzone in the mall, along with our covenants. Our covenants are coming with us. The mall itself becomes slightly less dangerous, but we still continue sort of those daily quests in Korthia. We will, of course, be collecting a new currency while we're there, which means Stygia stays the Season 1 currency. Don't save it, use it. We'll be heading forward to see exactly what it is like, sort of collecting, I guess, the next set of dailies at that point. So it's interesting they went to the mall first. I think that's a really good idea. The mall itself was kind of lackluster in terms of it, like, barely coming together at the end, understanding how they went through development, everything that changed, what was added. So I'm glad they're focusing on this one first. The next piece of sort of new news in terms of the patch is we will be getting a brand new mega dungeon, right? So that is a broker themed mega dungeon, a la Mechagon. It'll be an 8 boss dungeon, 5-man, mythic only, and basically it will contain similar hard modes, I guess a similar hard mode that Mechagon had. So this one will be really cool. I personally really enjoyed Mechagon. I thought it was interesting, to add in just a large scale dungeon, bringing back sort of the Karazhan vibes from BC. So um, always cool to see some of those initial 10-man dungeons. And it'll be fun to sort of go through, progress through in this one. I think the only downside, right, is it being mythic only. You really can only go in with like one group of friends, or at least one of your friends, if they come in late and one has to drop, will miss out on sort of the endings if you're sort of lockout based there. But as an 8 boss dungeon, 5-man, it'll be fun. It'll be fun. So moving on after that, we also got a little bit of a drop on the raid hint. So 9.1's raid will be called Sanctum of Domination. And of course, it will be a 10-man boss dungeon. They've been sort of focusing in on these sort of like low double digit, 10, between like 9 and 12 boss dungeons. I think it's interesting. I think it'll be fun to go through it all. They hinted on a couple of bosses, right? We will be fighting Kel'Thuzad, which if you listen to the Peak podcast that Emilson and I put on, I sort of nailed that one. I of course thought it was going to be Kel'Thuzad in a Maldraxxus based dungeon as the final boss there for 9.1. So slightly off in where the dungeon was and who the end boss was, but I know Kel'Thuzad. Give me some points for that, boys and girls. But yeah, they sort of gave a couple other bosses. The boss from Torghast, the mob from Torghast, where if you die too much, it sort of slowly walks through and tries to kill you. They will end up being a boss, and the final boss, of course, is Sylvanas, which is a surprise that Sylvanas ends up being the boss this early in the expansion. Sort of a quick aside, some of my thoughts here, and I talked a little bit more with Emerson on the podcast about exactly what Sylvanas as the end boss here in 9.1 means, and not, say, the jailer or another lesser character working up to the jailer and then working up eventually to whoever the final main boss is. But Sylvanas here really opens her up to be, I don't know if we're going to say redemption arc, but opens her up to be a character we do not kill outright, which I am extremely disappointed in from just a storytelling perspective. I think that, Blizzard really hasn't killed off a major story character in a very long time. At least some of the major ones from War 3, right? We went through the whole Wrath of Lich King BC era of boss fights. We ended up killing or banishing. I mean, I guess Illidan being one we didn't kill, but like Kale tried to kill multiple times. We killed, Arthas, and and those sort of major lore characters. So being able to kill Sylvanas, who has turned bad, would be interesting. I mean, we didn't even get a chance to kill Garrosh, which would have been another one. So sort of par for the course with Blizzard, sort of protecting some of their major lore characters like this. But so I was a little bit disappointed there. But it does introduce potentially some interesting storylines that me not knowing much about the lore maybe might be interesting in terms of like have confirmation that the Dreadlords will be around in this sort of patch. So maybe there's some play where Sylvanas is really only helping the jailer to further her own plot to get back at whether it's Arthas or whether it's ultimately maybe some Dreadlords sort of start to peek their heads in since they basically betrayed her in Wrath. So it'll be interesting to see. But yes, 10-man boss Sylvanas is or 10-man raid with Sylvanas as the final boss. It'll be exciting. Other than that, a couple of quick hits. We do have, of course, Covenant updates in terms of new armor and new mounts. The Night Fae Fox mount looks scary as hell if you have a chance to get a chance to take a look at that. So avoid that one. But the rest of them, looking too good. You're looking okay. But yeah, just some cosmetic updates there. The season 2 rewards for both Arena and Keystone Master are really just recolors of the current ones. A little bit disappointing there, but yeah, I mean, other than that, lots of interesting things, at least in terms of new content coming from this patch. Um, just a couple of quick hits, outside of the presentation from some of the interviews that went on. Right, we learned a little bit more. I mentioned earlier, Stygia is season 1 only currency. Spend it now; it won't be used for anything beyond it. Sockets, of course, are the main use of this currency, but also filling out conduit holes. For sockets, they're only usable on season 1 gear, so spend that currency, spend it now. There will of course be no new systems going into 9.1, which is interesting in terms of just I believe Blizzard probably feels fairly comfortable with the systems they have in place now. No need to really add bloat to that. So we'll see. There'll be a ton of tweaks to the current ones. They've already talked about tweaking some of the Covenant abilities, some of that pieces. Tweaking some of the conduit stuff, which I haven't talked about yet. But yeah, we'll really just end up getting, refinements to current systems. Speaking of refinements, Torghast, of course, is getting some updates, new anima powers, new wings, new areas, new enemies. So, just a new-ish things in Torghast. Structure is still the same, but just new areas to explore, new enemies to fight. And then empowered conduits are another item that they talked about where certain conduits can be empowered, where they gain additional benefits. That was really under early development, but sort of the idea that maybe a certain conduit you want to empower, in your soulbind tree, and give you a little bit more oomph on whatever that ends up being. The only other two pieces are big pieces I think I wanted to cover quickly, and those are around gearing. So the first one is, of course, they mentioned tier sets, and they essentially said no new tier sets in 9.1. And the way that the question was answered led me to believe that probably no tier sets even in 9.2. 9.3 being the potential earliest, but honestly, it's looking like tier sets might be a system that they just push off again for another expansion, or just never comes back. The way the question was answered was very much like, hey, we think tier sets are cool, but in 9.1, we're going to let you transmog all your armor to look like legendary armor, and there's your tier set. So yeah. I mean, I think the other thing is that they might have confused the question with like class sets and tier sets, where like to me, class sets is like an armor set that is unique to your class, right? And tier sets are sort of those like things that drop in a raid or drop in a raid tier that you collect 2, 4, whatever the combination is, number of items, and you gain a bonus from that item. So that is that's the thing with that. So no tier sets, 9.1, looking like probably not 9.2, potentially even all the way out to whatever 10.0 ends up being in terms of expansion. So that's the big one. The other one was Ian gave a quote to Forbes around the around gearing in dungeons, and I wanted to actually read it word for word because I actually read this first, didn't think much of it, and then Emerson mentioned something on the podcast that made me start to think that maybe this wasn't as sort of innocuous as I thought it was. I'm going to pull it up real quick and I'm going to read it for you guys. It says, Ian, this is basically Ian speaking to Forbes, says, we do have some exciting plans in the works to also give a special exciting reward to raiders who are going to the Sanctum of Domination. and maybe even be able to tinker with some of the very power of domination itself that lies within as they gain unique armor pieces and more. Uh, he explained, we'll have a lot more to say about that system as the PTR goes up. But for Raiders, we hear you, understand that at times it has felt like you've been overshadowed by dungeon runners and by PvP oriented players. Just the part that sort of scares me, and I'll tell you why, was the thing around that they might be able to tinker with some of the very power of domination itself that lies within as they get unique armor pieces and more. Tinkering with the power of domination sounds a lot like corruption, which, right, wrong, or indifferent, corruption was a band-aid fix for something they had to add and just be excited about gear again, right? I think this sounds a lot like potentially a rehashed corruption system, which I am less than excited about. I mean, I think corruption in itself was fun. I think there was some fun builds you could end up doing with it, right? And eventually they added a vendor like they always do to fill in the holes, right? But I think in general, like the system lacked any sort of excitement, right? Like I think what they're trying to get to is like you're excited to get a piece of gear. So um, to me, a stripped down version of the corruption system might work, but I don't know, man. I don't think I want corruption back. I don't think I want it back. Um, but yeah, that was a very interesting quote. I didn't pick up on it at first when I was sort of collecting all the information for this one, but yeah, potentially corruption's back. No tier sets. A raid where Sylvanas might actually live. Ugh, I don't know. I will say though that this BlizzCon was actually really exciting. I mean, I talk mostly WoW here, but I'm really excited for some of the other IP out there. Diablo's looking great. Like Diablo 4 looks very good. Diablo 2 Resurrected looks amazing. Even Diablo Immortal looks great. So yeah, Overwatch 2, I think the horde mode stuff, the less PV or the more PV focused content there looks really fun. And yeah, Hearthstone's got an expansion. I don't know much about it, but yeah, I mean, all in all, I think this BlizzCon ended up being really cool. I think we got less in terms of like behind the scenes or some like interesting tidbits. A lot of this was like, there wasn't a lot of mingling of different community figures and devs and things like that. But yeah, I mean, as a BlizzCon doing it online, I enjoyed it. Enjoyed all the streams, enjoyed all the panels, enjoyed all the discussions. So yeah, so and those are my thoughts on the retail side of things. I'll probably put something together on actual BC because I'm really excited about that. But honestly, it'll probably just be a 5-minute video of me just screaming about how excited I am about going back to BC. In any event, though, I mean, hopefully you guys enjoyed BlizzCon. Hopefully you found this helpful. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions, anything you'd like me to talk about, anything in general, or just let me know. Honestly, did you guys enjoy BlizzCon? I mean, I thought the announcements were pretty good. At first, I was kind of disappointed, but when I sat back, sort of put together the script for this, put together what I wanted to talk about, I was like, there's actually a lot here. I think it's cool that we're not getting new systems. They're just sort of refining what's out there. So, um, yeah, definitely, guys. Um, that's it for me. I had fun. I enjoyed it. Hope you guys did too. Just let me know, and you guys have a good rest of your day. Bye.